The music stopped. The chatter of the continent's most powerful alphas died instantly. All eyes were glued to the center of the ballroom floor, where a waitress in a cheap, stain-covered uniform had just collapsed, shattering a tray of crystal flutes. Blood, dark and smelling of distress, pooled rapidly beneath her pale form. The guests gasped in disgust, waiting for security to drag the clumsy Omega away. But they didn't. Instead, the terrifying, ruthless Alpha King, Damon Kincaid, let out a roar that shook the chandeliers. To the horror of the entire room, the king didn't attack her. He dropped to his knees in the broken glass and pulled her into his arms. Isla Bennett adjusted the tight collar of her uniform, wincing as the rough fabric rubbed against the fresh bruise on her collarbone. The kitchens of the Grand Obsidian Hotel were a chaotic symphony of shouting chefs, clattering pans, and the overwhelming, savory scent of roasted venison intended for the Alpha Summit. Isla was 22 years old, but her eyes held the exhaustion of someone who had lived 100 lifetimes of servitude. Technically, she was a member of the Silver Creek Pack, but she was treated lower than the dirt on their boots. An orphan with no known lineage, she had been branded an Omega, the lowest of the low, and forced to work off a debt her parents supposedly left behind when they died in a rogue attack. "Bennett, move your feet!" screamed Beatrice, the head of the serving staff, and a woman who took perverse pleasure in Isla's misery. "Alpha Gavin demands the champagne tower be perfect. If you break a single glass, I'll have you sleeping in the kennels outside." "Yes, Beatrice," Isla whispered, keeping her head down. The Grand Obsidian Hotel had been rented out entirely for the arrival of the Alpha King. It was the most significant event of the decade. Alphas from every territory in the Western Hemisphere were gathering to renew their treaties. For Alpha Gavin, the leader of Silver Creek, this was his chance to climb the social ladder. He needed everything to be flawless. Isla picked up a heavy silver tray, her arms trembling slightly. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Alpha Gavin had decreed that the Omegas would fast until the event was over to ensure maximum focus. A cruel logic that made no sense to anyone but him. As she pushed through the swinging door and into the service corridor, she caught her reflection in a dark window. Her chestnut hair was pulled back into a severe, unflattering bun, and her uniform was 2 sizes too big, swallowing her slender frame. She looked like a ghost, and that was exactly what she was supposed to be, invisible, unimportant. "Isla." The voice was low and dripping with malice. Isla froze. She knew that voice. It belonged to Chloe Sterling, Alpha Gavin's daughter and the self-proclaimed princess of the pack. Isla turned slowly. Chloe was leaning against the wall, dressed in a shimmering emerald gown that cost more than Isla would earn in 10 years. She looked stunning, but her eyes were predatory. "Chloe," Isla said softly, "I need to get these glasses to the ballroom." "You need to learn your place," Chloe sneered, pushing off the wall. She stalked toward Isla, her heels clicking ominously on the tile floor. "My father is stressed. He thinks the king might not sign the trade deal. And do you know what happens when my father is stressed? He looks for things to break." Chloe reached out and flicked the edge of the heavy tray Isla was balancing. "You shouldn't even be here, Bennett. You smell like dishwater and poverty. You're going to offend the king's nose." "I'll stay downwind," Isla said, her grip tightening on the tray. "Please, Chloe. Beatrice will kill me if I'm late." "Beatrice is the least of your worries," Chloe smiled, revealing perfectly whitened teeth. "I heard a rumor, Isla. I heard the king is looking for a mate. And my father thinks it's going to be me. Imagine that. Me, queen of all Lycans." "I'm sure he will choose you," Isla lied, desperate to de-escalate the situation. Chloe's expression darkened. "You say that with such lack of conviction." Without warning, Chloe lashed out. It wasn't a punch, but a shove, powered by alpha blood. Isla stumbled back, the heavy tray tipping. She managed to save the glasses with a desperate lunge, but her hips slammed hard into the metal corner of a prep table. A sharp cry escaped her lips. The pain was blinding, shooting down her leg. "Oops," Chloe laughed, checking her manicured nails. "Clumsy thing. You better pull it together, Isla. The king arrives in 20 minutes. If you ruin my night, I won't just send you to the kennels. I'll sell you to the rogues." Chloe turned and sashayed away, leaving Isla gasping for breath against the cold metal table. Isla bit her lip until she tasted copper. She forced herself upright. She couldn't cry. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. She had to survive tonight. Just one more night. But as she limped towards the ballroom, she didn't know that the pain in her hip was the least of her problems. Something was shifting in the air. The atmosphere was growing heavy, charged with static electricity. It was the pressure of an apex predator approaching. The king was coming. The ballroom was a masterpiece of gold leaf and velvet. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, casting a warm, expensive glow over the hundreds of guests. The air was thick with the scents of expensive perfumes, cologne, and the underlying musk of powerful wolves. Isla moved through the crowd like a shadow, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres, keeping her eyes fixed on the floor. Her hip throbbed with every step, a dull, grinding agony that made her nauseous. She was currently stationed near the VIP section, a raised platform where Alpha Gavin sat with his beta, Liam, and his wife, Luna Sarah. They were nervously checking their watches. "He's late," Gavin muttered, downing a glass of whiskey. "Damon Kincaid is never late." "Do you think he's not coming?" "He'll be here," Sarah soothed him, though she looked equally anxious. "Chloe is ready. She's positioned near the entrance. Once he sees her, he won't be thinking about trade deals." Isla tried to back away, wanting to be as far from Gavin as possible, but a hand grabbed her wrist. It was Liam, the beta. "Refill," Liam growled, shoving his empty glass into her chest. "Yes, Beta Liam," Isla murmured. She poured the amber liquid with a steady hand, despite the trembling in her legs. "Why is this girl serving the head table?" Gavin snapped, glaring at Isla with pure hatred. "She's an eyesore. Look at her, pale as a corpse. Get her out of my sight." "I'm short-staffed, Alpha," Liam said dismissively. "The other girls are busy fawning over the visiting alphas. Isla is the only one who does what she's told." "Just keep her away from the king," Gavin hissed. "If Kincaid sees we employ runts like this, he'll think our pack is weak." Isla finished pouring and quickly retreated to the service station behind a velvet curtain. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for a second. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. She felt strange. It wasn't just the pain in her hip. It was a burning sensation in her veins. She felt feverish. Suddenly the curtain was ripped back. Isla jumped. It was Chloe again. But this time, she wasn't smiling. She looked frantic. "You!" Chloe spat. "You switched the wine, didn't you?" "What?" Isla blinked, confused. "I don't touch the wine, Chloe. Only the sommelier does." "Don't lie to me." Chloe grabbed Isla by the front of her uniform and slammed her back against the wall. "My dress. A waiter spilled red wine on the hem of my dress. I told my father it was you." "I haven't been near you," Isla protested, panic rising. "It doesn't matter," Chloe hissed. She pulled something from the hidden pocket of her gown. It was a small, ornate fruit knife. The handle was pearl, but the blade was dull grey, silver. Pure silver was poisonous to werewolves. It burned like fire and prevented healing. "Chloe, don't," Isla pleaded, her eyes widening. "Please, the king is about to arrive." "Exactly," Chloe whispered crazily, "and I need to vent some steam so I can be perfect for him. And you're just a punching bag." Chloe didn't stab her deeply. She wasn't trying to kill her. Not here, not now. Instead, she slashed the blade across Isla's forearm, a shallow but long cut. The pain was instantaneous and excruciating. It felt like liquid lava was being poured onto her skin. Isla clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream, tears finally leaking from her eyes. "That's for existing," Chloe smirked. She wiped the blade on Isla's apron. "Now clean yourself up. If you bleed on the floor, I'll finish the job." Chloe turned and ran back towards the ballroom entrance, her face instantly composing itself into a mask of sweet innocence. Isla slid down the wall, clutching her arm. Smoke was rising faintly from the wound where the silver reacted with her blood. The smell of burning flesh mixed with the metallic tang of blood. She needed a healer. She needed to leave. But she couldn't. If she left her post, Gavin would kill her. Trembling violently, Isla grabbed a clean cloth napkin from the supply stack. She wrapped it tightly around her forearm, tying it as hard as she could to stanch the flow of blood. She pulled her long sleeve down to cover the bandage. "Pull it together, Isla," she told herself. "Just 2 more hours. Then you can go to the basement and pass out." She stood up, swaying. The world tilted slightly. The silver poison was entering her bloodstream, weakening her already exhausted system. She picked up a fresh tray of champagne flutes. As she stepped back out from behind the curtain, the music stopped abruptly. The heavy oak doors at the far end of the ballroom groaned open. A hush fell over the room, so profound that the clinking of ice in a glass sounded like a gunshot. A group of 6 men walked in. They were all large, dressed in black tactical suits rather than tuxedos, radiating danger. But the man in the center, he was different. He was over 6'4", with shoulders that spanned the width of a doorframe. His hair was pitch black, swept back from a face that was devastatingly handsome, but carved from granite. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, even indoors, adding to his terrifying mystique. Damon Kincaid, the Alpha King, the Wolf of War. The power radiating off him was a physical force. It hit Isla like a gust of wind. The guests nearest to him bowed their heads instinctively, exposing their necks in submission. Isla stood frozen near the VIP table, clutching her tray. Damon Kincaid stopped in the center of the room. He took off his sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes the color of molten gold. He scanned the room, looking bored, looking lethal, and then he stiffened. His head snapped to the right, his nostrils flared. Isla's heart stopped. She felt a pull in her chest, a magnetic hook that tugged her toward him. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. "He smells the blood," she thought in panic. "He smells the silver. He knows I'm injured and weak." She tried to shrink back into the shadows, but her legs refused to move. The silver poison was making her dizzy. The room began to spin. Damon took a step forward, ignoring the greeting of Alpha Gavin, who was rushing toward him. Damon's golden eyes were scanning the crowd with laser focus, hunting for something. Hunting for her. The Alpha King did not move like a man. He moved like a storm front rolling over a plain. Damon Kincaid ignored the outstretched hand of Alpha Gavin. He ignored the simpering smile of Luna Sarah. He didn't even glance at the heavy oak table laden with the treaty documents that were the ostensible reason for his visit. His entire world had narrowed down to a singular, maddening scent. It was faint, buried under the cloying stench of industrial floor cleaner, cheap perfume, and stale champagne. But it was there. It smelled like petrichor, the earth after a heavy rain, mixed with wild honeysuckle. It was the most intoxicating thing he had ever smelled in his 30 years of life. But beneath that heavenly aroma, there was something else. The sharp copper tang of blood, and worse, the acrid, sulphurous reek of burning flesh. "Silver!" his wolf roared in his mind. "Mate is hurt. Mate is dying." Damon's jaw clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. He took another step, the crowd parting before him like the Red Sea. "Your Majesty," Chloe Sterling stepped directly into his path. She had positioned herself perfectly, the light from the chandelier catching the sequins of her emerald dress. She dipped into a curtsy that displayed an ample amount of cleavage. "Welcome to the Silver Creek Pack. I am Chloe, daughter of Alpha Gavin. We have been waiting for—" "Move!" Damon growled. The word was not a request, it was a physical blow. Chloe blinked, her smile faltering. Excuse me?" "You smell of narcissism and desperation," Damon said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Step aside, or I will remove you." Gasps rippled through the hall. Alpha Gavin turned pale, stepping forward to intervene. "Your Majesty, please forgive my daughter. She is merely excited to—" Damon didn't wait. He sidestepped Chloe as if she were a piece of furniture and continued his relentless march towards the service area. Isla, standing by the velvet curtain, felt the room tilting violently. The silver poison had done its work. Her vision was tunneling, black spots dancing at the edges of her sight. The tray of crystal flutes in her hands felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "He's coming here," her mind screamed. "Why is he coming here?" She tried to turn, to flee back into the kitchen, but her legs finally betrayed her. The injured hip gave way, and the strength vanished from her knees. Isla pitched forward. Time seemed to slow down. She saw the floor rushing up to meet her. She heard the tray slip from her numb fingers. She braced herself for the impact, for the shatter of glass, and for the inevitable beating Beatrice would give her later. Crash! The sound was deafening. Shards of crystal exploded outward, scattering across the polished marble. Champagne soaked the hem of her oversized uniform. Isla hit the ground hard, her hands landing directly on the jagged glass. "Oh, for God's sake," Chloe's voice rang out, shrill and angry. "Look at what that clumsy idiot did. Someone get security. Drag that trash out of here." Isla tried to push herself up, but a fresh wave of agony washed over her. The cut on her arm, hidden beneath the sleeve, was throbbing in time with her heart. She looked down and saw a dark stain spreading rapidly through the white fabric of her sleeve. The silver was eating her alive. "I'm sorry," Isla whispered, though no one could hear her. "I'm sorry." 2 large security guards started marching toward her, their faces grim. "Don't touch her!" The roar shook the windows in their frames. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated dominance. Every werewolf in the room, including Alpha Gavin, instinctively bared their necks in submission. Damon Kincaid was there in a blur of motion. He didn't stop at the edge of the mess. He walked straight into the puddle of champagne and broken glass, his heavy combat boots crunching over the debris. He reached Isla before the guards could even get close. The room watched in horrified fascination. The Alpha King, the most powerful predator on the continent, the man who had executed rogue warlords with his bare hands, was kneeling on the wet, glass-covered floor. "Look at me," Damon commanded. His voice wasn't a roar anymore. It was a low, rumbling vibration that Isla felt in her chest. Isla lifted her head, her eyes unfocused. She looked up into pools of molten gold. The intensity of his gaze pinned her to the spot. "It hurts," she whimpered, the delirious words slipping out before she could stop them. Damon's eyes widened as he took in her appearance. The bruises on her neck, the gaunt hollows of her cheeks, and the blood, so much blood, soaking her sleeve and dripping onto the glass. He reached out, his large hand hovering over her injured arm. He didn't care about the mess. He didn't care that he was the king. "Who did this?" Damon demanded, his voice rising in volume, turning into a snarl that promised murder. He looked up, scanning the room with eyes that burned like hellfire. "Who poisoned her with silver?" The silence was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Chloe, who had been smirking a moment ago, took a terrified step back. The colour drained from her face. Damon looked back down at Isla. The bond snapped into place, a steel cable connecting his soul to hers. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. It was mate. "I've got you," he whispered, his tone shifting to something impossibly gentle. "I've got you, little one." He slid his arms under her, ignoring the glass slicing into his expensive tactical pants, and lifted her effortlessly against his chest. Isla's head lolled against his shoulder. She smelled the rain and the wood smoke, and for the first time in her life, she felt safe. "King Damon," Alpha Gavin stammered, stepping forward, sweat beading on his forehead. "Put the girl down. She is just a servant, a nobody. She has ruined the reception. We will dispose of her and—" Damon turned slowly, Isla cradled in his arms. He looked at Gavin with the cold detachment of an executioner. "Speak one more word," Damon said softly, "and I will tear your throat out in front of your pack." Gavin's mouth snapped shut with an audible click. "Sebastian," Damon barked. A tall, lean man with spectacles and a sharp, intelligent face stepped out from the group of royal guards. This was Sebastian Cole, the king's royal beta and deadliest tactician. "Your Majesty, lock this room down," Damon ordered, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "No one leaves, no one enters. Confiscate all phones. If anyone tries to exit, break their legs." "Sir, understood," Sebastian said calmly, pulling a sleek pistol from his jacket. "I am taking my mate to the penthouse," Damon announced, the word mate landing like a nuclear bomb in the center of the room. Get Dr. Thorne immediately, and Sebastian, find out who touched her. I want a name." Damon turned and strode out of the ballroom, carrying the unconscious waitress as if she were the crown jewels, leaving a room full of trembling elites and a shattered hierarchy in his wake. The elevator ride to the penthouse suite was a blur of panic for Damon. Isla had lost consciousness completely. Her skin was clammy, turning a terrifying shade of grey. The smell of the burning silver was getting stronger. "Stay with me," Damon growled, shifting her weight so he could press his hand over her heart. It was beating too fast, a fluttery, weak rhythm that terrified him. "Don't you dare die on me, now that I've found you." The doors chimed and slid open. Damon rushed into the sprawling suite, kicking the door to the master bedroom open. He laid her gently on the massive king-sized bed, the stark white sheets instantly staining with dirt, wine, and blood. "Aris!" Damon roared over his shoulder. Dr. Aris Thorne ran into the room seconds later, carrying a large medical trauma case. Aris was a genius healer, known for his ability to synthesize antidotes for rare poisons. He was also the only man who could tell Damon to calm down without getting punched. "Back up, Damon," Aris commanded, snapping on blue nitrile gloves. "I need space to work." "She's fading." Damon paced at the foot of the bed, his hands clenching and unclenching. "It's silver." Aris moved quickly, using heavy medical shears to cut away the sleeve of Isla's uniform. Damon stopped pacing. He stared. The uniform fell away to reveal an arm that looked like a road map of torture. There was the fresh, sizzling cut from the silver knife, the flesh around it blackened and bubbling. But there were old scars, too. Cigarette burns, lash marks, fade bruises in various stages of healing. And her wrist was so thin Damon felt he could snap it with 2 fingers. She was severely malnourished. "Gods," Aris breathed, his professional mask slipping for a second. "This isn't just an injury, Damon. This is systematic abuse, long-term starvation." A low, guttural sound tore from Damon's chest. His wolf was surfacing, demanding blood, demanding retribution. He grabbed the heavy oak bedpost and squeezed. The wood splintered and cracked under his grip. "Fix the silver," Damon snarled, his eyes flashing gold. "I will deal with the rest." Aris worked with practiced efficiency. He flushed the wound with a neutralizing saline solution, then applied a thick, blue gel that hissed when it touched Isla's skin. The silver nitrate entered her bloodstream, Aris explained, injecting a clear fluid into her IV line. It caused a systemic shock. If you hadn't picked her up when you did, the toxicity would have stopped her heart within the hour. Damon walked to the side of the bed. He reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from Isla's forehead. Her skin was burning up. "Will she live?" "She's strong," Aris said, bandaging the arm. "Surprisingly strong for someone with 0 body fat. The antidote is working. She needs rest, food, and she needs your scent. The bond will help her heal faster." Aris packed up his bag. "I'll be in the adjoining room monitoring her vitals. Don't smother her, Damon. Let her breathe." When the door clicked shut, the king of all lichens collapsed into the chair beside the bed. He took Isla's uninjured hand in his. It was rough, calloused from hard labor. "I'm sorry I was late," he whispered to the sleeping girl. "I promise you, whoever did this, they will pray for the mercy of death before I am finished." It was hours later when Isla floated back to consciousness. The first thing she noticed was the softness. She was lying on a cloud. The sheets were silk, cool and smooth against her skin. The air smelled different, clean, expensive, and filled with that scent of rain and wood smoke. She opened her eyes, panic spiking immediately. Where was she? The kitchen? The kennels? She tried to sit up, but a warm, heavy weight across her legs pinned her down. She looked down. Sleeping in a chair next to the bed, with his head resting on the mattress near her hip, was the Alpha King. One of his massive hands was draped possessively over her legs, anchoring her to the bed. Isla stopped breathing. She was hallucinating. She had died and gone to some weird afterlife. She tried to slowly, carefully slide her leg out from under his hand. Instantly, Damon's eyes snapped open. There was no grogginess, no moment of confusion. 1 second he was asleep, the next he was fully awake and staring at her with laser intensity. "You're awake," he said, his voice raspy with sleep. Isla scrambled back against the headboard, pulling the duvet up to her chin. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I don't know how I got here. I didn't mean to. I'll leave immediately. Please don't punish me. Daemon sat up slowly, raising his hands palm out to show he wasn't a threat. The sight of her terror, the way she flinched when he moved, sent a spike of pain through his heart. Isla, he said softly. He had learned her name from her employee file Sebastian had pulled up. You are not in trouble. You are safe. Safe? Isla let out a shaky, hysterical laugh. I broke the crystal. Beatrice is going to lock me in the cellar for a week. And the dress, I ruined the floor. Beatrice will never touch you again, Daemon said, his tone hardening slightly. No one will ever touch you again. He leaned forward, and Isla pressed herself flat against the headboard. Why? She whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Why are you doing this? I'm just a waitress. I'm an Omega. Daemon watched her carefully. Is that what they told you? That you're an Omega? I have no wolf, Isla said, looking down at her bandaged arm. I can't shift. I have no rank. I'm nothing. You are not nothing, Daemon said firmly, and you are certainly not an Omega. He stood up and moved to sit on the edge of the bed. He was careful not to touch her yet, giving her space. Isla, when I walked into that ballroom, I didn't smell a waitress. I didn't smell an Omega. He tapped his own chest, right over his heart. I smelled the other half of my soul. Isla stared at him, her mouth parting slightly. I don't understand. The moon goddess does not make mistakes, Daemon said. You are my mate, Isla. You are the lunar queen. The silence stretched between them. Isla shook her head slowly. This was a cruel joke. Chloe must have put him up to this. Get her hopes up. Make her believe she was special, and then crush her. No, Isla said, her voice trembling. That's impossible. Kings don't mate with servants. You're mistaken. Daemon's expression softened. He reached out slowly, waiting for her to pull away. When she didn't, he gently cupped her cheek. The moment skin touched skin, a jolt of electricity arced through them both. It wasn't painful. It was euphoric. It felt like coming home after a long, cold winter. Isla gasped, her eyes widening. She felt it, the hum in her blood, the singing of a wolf she thought she didn't have. Did you feel that? Daemon asked, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Isla nodded, unable to speak. That is the bond, Daemon said. I accept it, Isla. I accept you. Do you accept me? Before Isla could answer, a knock at the door shattered the moment. Daemon pulled back, his face darkening. Enter. Beta Sebastian walked in, looking grim. He held a tablet in his hand and a clear plastic evidence bag in the other. Inside the bag was the pearl-handled fruit knife. We found it, Sebastian said, not looking at Isla to avoid disrespecting the king's mate. It was in a trash bin in the women's restroom. Prints were wiped, but the scent remains. And? Daemon stood up, his height filling the room. It smells of Chloe Sterling, Sebastian confirmed. And Your Majesty, there is more. Sebastian tapped the tablet. I ran a background check on Isla Bennett. Her parents were supposedly killed in a rogue attack 12 years ago near the border of the Crimson Shadow Pack. Isla sat up straighter. Yes, that's true. It's not, Sebastian corrected gently. I cross-referenced the attack logs. There was no rogue attack on that date. However, on that same night, the beta of the Crimson Shadow Pack, a man named Silas Bennett, went missing along with his wife and child after a failed coup against a corrupt alpha. Daemon turned to Isla, his eyes narrowing in calculation. Silas Bennett was a warrior, a powerful alpha bloodline. Isla isn't a wolfless Omega, Sebastian concluded, adjusting his glasses. She's a latent alpha. Her wolf has been suppressed, likely by wolfsbane laced in her food, keeping her weak and unable to shift. The room spun around Isla. What? Daemon's growl was low and dangerous. They have been poisoning you to keep you docile, to steal your birthright. He turned to Sebastian. Where is Alpha Gavin? He is in the lobby, demanding an audience. He claims Isla is a fugitive who owes him a financial debt. Daemon walked to the wardrobe and pulled out a fresh black shirt, pulling it on over his muscular torso. The transformation from gentle protector to warlord was instant. "Sebastian," Damon said, his voice ice-cold, "bring the car around. We are going back to the ballroom." He turned to Isla. "Can you walk? Or should I carry you?" I can walk," Isla said, swinging her legs off the bed. She felt stronger. The bond was feeding her energy. "Good," Damon held out his hand. "Because tonight, my queen, we are going to burn their house of cards to the ground." The grand ballroom had not been cleared. On the contrary, it was more crowded than before. Word had spread through the hotel like wildfire. The king had claimed a servant. The king was angry. The air in the room was stifling, heavy with the scent of fear sweat and anxious pheromones. Alpha Gavin Sterling stood near the center of the room, pacing back and forth like a caged tiger. He had rallied his immediate subordinates, 6 large enforcers, who looked uneasy about the prospect of facing the royal guard. "It's a misunderstanding," Gavin was saying loudly to a neighboring Alpha from the Northern Territories. "The girl is mentally unstable. She's a thief. I was merely disciplining a wayward pack member." "Is poisoning a pack member with silver considered discipline in Silver Creek?" A voice cut through the room. The heavy double doors swung open, but this time the silence that followed was not one of awe, but of judgment. Damon Kincaid walked in. He had shed his tuxedo jacket. He wore a fitted black tactical shirt that emphasized the terrifying breadth of his chest and the lethal tattoos winding up his arms. But no one was looking at the king. They were looking at the woman beside him. Isla Bennett was no longer wearing the stained, oversized waitress uniform. She was dressed in one of Damon's spare white dress shirts, which hung to her mid-thigh, cinched at the waist with a leather belt. She wore black leggings and heavy combat boots. Her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders in waves of rich chestnut. She looked small next to the king, but she didn't look weak. Her chin was up. Her eyes, though red-rimmed, were clear. The king's hand rested protectively on the small of her back, a physical claim that dared anyone to challenge it. "Damon," Gavin started, putting on a jovial, forced smile. "I see you've cleaned her up. Now if you'll just hand her over, we can discuss the trade agreement. She has a shift to finish." Damon stopped 10 feet from Gavin. The royal guard, led by Sebastian, fanned out in a semicircle, their hands hovering near their holsters. "There will be no trade agreement," Damon said calmly, "and Isla has finished her shift. Permanently." "She owes a debt," Gavin snapped, his patience fraying. "Her parents—" "Stop," Isla spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. She took a step forward, stepping out of Damon's shadow. Gavin looked at her with pure contempt. "You speak when spoken to, Omega." "I am not an Omega," Isla said, her voice gaining strength. The antidote Dr. Thorne had administered was doing more than healing her body. It was clearing a fog in her mind she hadn't realized was there. "And I owe you nothing. My parents didn't leave a debt. They left an inheritance." Gavin froze. His eyes darted to Sebastian, who was holding a thick file. "We pulled the bank records, Gavin," Sebastian announced, his voice dry and clinical. "Silas Bennett didn't die penniless. He had substantial holdings in a trust fund managed by the First National Bank of Seattle. When he went missing, you forged power of attorney documents. You seized the assets, liquidated them, and then enslaved his daughter, claiming she had to work off a fictional debt." Gasps rippled through the crowd of aristocrats. Financial fraud was common. Enslaving a high-born child was a capital offense in Lycan law. "Lies!" Gavin roared, veins bulging in his neck. "She is a liar, just like her traitor father." "And the silver?" Damon asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Is that a lie, too?" Sebastian stepped forward and held up the plastic bag containing the pearl-handled knife. "Chloe Sterling's knife," Sebastian stated, "found in the trash, covered in Isla's blood and silver residue." All eyes turned to Chloe, who was standing behind her father. She looked like a cornered rat, her perfect composure cracked. "She deserved it!" Chloe shrieked, stamping her foot. "She ruined my night. She's just a dirty waitress. Who cares if she bleeds? She's nobody." "She is the queen," Damon's voice was a thunderclap. He moved. It was faster than human eyesight could track. One moment he was standing beside Isla. The next, he had crossed the distance and gripped Alpha Gavin by the throat, lifting him a foot off the ground. Gavin clawed at the king's hand, his legs kicking uselessly. "You poisoned her food with wolfsbane for 12 years, Damon snarled into Gavin's purpling face. "You starved her. You let your daughter hunt her for sport. You thought because she had no one, she had no value." Damon turned Gavin, so he faced the crowd, tightening his grip. "Look at him!" Damon commanded the room. "This is not an alpha. An alpha protects. An alpha provides. This is a parasite." Damon threw Gavin across the room. The Silver Creek Alpha crashed into the banquet table, sending platters of food and expensive china flying. "Fight me," Damon ordered, unbuttoning his cuffs. "You want to keep your title? You want to keep your life? Defend it!" Gavin scrambled to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. He looked at his 6 enforcers. "Kill him! Attack! He's just one wolf!" The enforcers looked at the king, then at Gavin. They looked at the royal guard, who had their weapons drawn. One by one, the enforcers lowered their heads and stepped back. They would not die for Gavin Sterling. "Traitors!" Gavin screamed. "I am your alpha." "You are nothing," Isla said. She walked toward the center of the room. She felt a strange heat building in her chest, a pressure in her bones that was bordering on painful. "You killed my parents." Gavin looked at Isla, and a twisted idea formed in his desperate mind. He couldn't beat Damon, but if he killed the mate, he could destroy Damon. "If I go down," Gavin hissed, his eyes flashing red as he began to shift, "I'm taking the bitch with me." Gavin's body contorted, bones cracking as he shifted into a massive, jagged-furred grey wolf. He didn't lunge for Damon. He lunged straight for Isla. "No!" Damon roared, launching himself forward. But Gavin had the head start. His jaws, dripping with saliva, snapped open, aiming for Isla's exposed throat. Isla didn't run. She didn't scream. As the massive grey wolf flew toward her, the heat in her chest exploded. It was like a dam breaking. The wolfsbane that had suppressed her essence for a decade was gone. The trauma, the fear, the anger, it all fueled the ignition. Isla Bennett didn't just shift. She detonated. The sound of bones breaking is usually sickening. This time it sounded like a cannon firing. A shockwave of pure energy blasted outward from where Isla stood, knocking the nearest guests off their feet. A blinding white light filled the room, searing the retinas of everyone watching. When the light faded, Isla was gone. Standing in her place was a wolf of nightmare proportions. She was massive, easily as tall as Damon's wolf form would be, but it was her color that made the room gasp. She was pure, stark white, like fresh snow on a mountain peak. Her eyes were not the gold of an alpha, but a rare, piercing violet, the mark of the ancient bloodlines, the original warrior caste that had been thought extinct. The Crimson Shadow lineage. Gavin's grey wolf mid-air lunge was intercepted not by Damon, but by Isla herself. She moved with a fluidity that defied her size. She caught Gavin's throat in her jaws mid-air. The momentum carried them both crashing into the marble floor, but Isla was on top. Gavin thrashed, his claws raking against her white fur, but he was outmatched. Isla was not just an alpha. She was a primal force of nature that had been bottled up for too long. She clamped her jaws down. There was a sickening crunch. Gavin's struggles ceased instantly. Isla released him, stepping back. The grey wolf lay motionless, whimpering, paralyzed but alive. She hadn't killed him. She had severed his spinal cord. He would never walk, and he would certainly never shift again. The ballroom was dead silent. Isla stood over the fallen tyrant, her chest heaving. She threw her head back and let out a howl. It wasn't a mournful sound. It was a declaration. It shook the crystals in the chandeliers. "I am here. I am alive." Damon approached her slowly. He hadn't shifted. He walked up to the massive white wolf, showing no fear. "Isla," he said softly. The giant wolf turned her violet eyes toward him. For a second, there was only feral rage, the instinct to kill anything that moved. But then she blinked. She recognized him. The scent of rain and wood smoke calmed the storm inside her. She lowered her massive head, nudging it against his chest. Damon buried his hands in her thick white fur, resting his forehead against hers. Beautiful, he whispered. Absolute perfection. Daddy! Chloe's scream broke the tableau. Chloe had been watching in paralyzed horror. Now, seeing her father broken on the floor, she snapped. She grabbed a steak knife from a nearby table, steel this time, not silver, and ran at the white wolf, screaming in a high-pitched frenzy. You monster! You ruined everything! Isla didn't even turn around. She didn't have to. Damon didn't move either. He just watched, his face impassive. Before Chloe could get within striking distance, a blur of motion intercepted her. It was Beatrice, the head of the serving staff. Beatrice tackled Chloe to the ground, pinning the girl's wrists with surprising strength. Enough! Beatrice yelled, her face red. I will not lose my job or my life for you, you spoiled brat. Security finally swarmed in. 2 guards hauled a kicking and screaming Chloe off the floor. 2 more dragged the paralyzed body of Gavin away to the waiting medical transport, and then to the dungeons. Isla shuddered, her form blurring as she shifted back. The return to human form was painful. She collapsed onto the floor, naked and shivering. Damon was there instantly, wrapping his suit jacket around her, pulling her into his lap to shield her from the prying eyes of the crowd. I killed him? Isla asked, her voice raspy, burying her face in Damon's neck. No, Damon said, stroking her hair. You dispensed justice. He lives, but he will rot in a cell for the rest of his miserable life. Isla looked up, scanning the room. The hundreds of guests, alphas, lunas, dignitaries, were all bowing. They weren't bowing to Damon. They were bowing to her. Why are they doing that? She whispered. Because, Damon said, smiling. A real, genuine smile that transformed his face. You just defeated a corrupt alpha in single combat. You manifested the White Wolf. You aren't just my mate, Isla. You are the alpha of Silver Creek, by right of conquest. Isla blinked. I don't want to be an alpha. I just want to not be a waitress. Damon chuckled. A deep, rich sound. We can negotiate the details later. But for now, I think we should go home. Home? My territory, Damon said. The Obsidian Pack. It's in the mountains. It's quiet. No champagne towers. No Beatrice. And no Chloe? Isla asked hopefully. Chloe is going to a re-education camp in the tundra, Damon promised. You will never see her again. Son. Isla rested her head against his chest. She was exhausted, her body aching from the shift, her arm still throbbing where the silver had burned her. But for the first time in 12 years, the knot of anxiety in her stomach was gone. Take me home, Damon, she whispered. Damon stood up, lifting her effortlessly into his arms once more. Sebastian, Damon called out. Your Majesty? Prepare the jet. We leave in 10 minutes, and tell the hotel manager to send the bill for the damages to Gavin's personal estate. With pleasure, sir. As Damon carried Isla out of the ballroom, past the shattered glass and the stunned guests, Isla looked over his shoulder. She saw her reflection in a large mirror near the exit. She didn't look like a ghost anymore. She looked like a survivor. She looked like a queen. 3 months had passed since the night the glass shattered at the Grand Obsidian Hotel. High in the northern mountains, the air was crisp and smelled of pine and snow, a stark contrast to the grease and humidity of the Silver Creek kitchens. The Obsidian Palace, the ancestral home of the king, sat perched on a cliff edge, overlooking a valley that turned golden in the twilight. Isla stood on the expansive stone balcony, wrapped in a cashmere shawl that cost more than her entire life's earnings back in Silver Creek. The wind whipped her chestnut hair around her face, but she didn't shiver. The cold didn't bother her anymore. Her wolf, the white wolf of legend, thrived in the winter. She wasn't the same girl who had flinched at the sound of a dropped fork. Her ribs no longer showed through her skin. Her cheeks were flushed with health, and the scars on her arms had faded to thin, silvery lines, reminders of a past that felt like a bad dream. You're thinking too loud, a deep voice rumbled behind her. Strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against a hard, warm chest. Isla leaned into him, resting her head on Daemon's shoulder. "I was just thinking about the silence," Isla murmured, placing her hands over his. "For years, my life was just noise. Yelling, dishes crashing, Chloe screaming. Now, it's just peace." Daemon kissed the side of her neck, right over her mating mark. "You earned this peace, Isla. You fought for it." Speaking of fighting, Isla turned in his arms to face him. "Sebastian sent the report from the Tundra labor camp." Daemon's expression hardened slightly. "And?" "Chloe attempted to bribe a guard with a pair of diamond earrings she had smuggled in," Isla said, a small, wry smile playing on her lips. "The guard took the earrings and added 2 months to her sentence." "Justice is a slow grinder," Daemon said, "but it grinds exceedingly fine. And Gavin?" "Still in the isolation ward at the Citadel prison," Isla said, her voice devoid of pity. "The doctors say he will never walk again. He spends his days staring at the wall, knowing that the Omega he tortured is sitting on the throne he coveted." "He got off easy," Daemon growled. "If you hadn't stopped me, I would have dismantled him piece by piece." "Death is too quick for men like him," Isla said softly. "Let him live with his failure. That is a far worse punishment." She looked up at Daemon, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "Besides, I have more important things to focus on. The council meeting is tomorrow." Daemon smirked. "Nervous?" "Terrified," Isla admitted. "They are the oldest, most traditional alphas in the kingdom. They still see me as the waitress from the gala." "Then show them the queen," Daemon said fiercely. "Show them the white wolf." The council chamber was a cavernous room of black stone and firelight. 12 ancient alphas sat around a circular table, their expressions unreadable. They had been grumbling for weeks. A waitress? A servant? How could the king mate with someone so low? When the heavy iron doors opened, the murmuring stopped. Daemon walked in first, radiating his usual lethal power. But he did not take the head of the table. He stood to the side. Isla entered. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet, high-necked and long-sleeved, designed to look like armor. On her head sat a simple, terrifyingly heavy circlet of platinum. She didn't walk with the hurried scuttle of a servant. She walked with the predatory grace of an apex predator. The click of her boots echoed in the silence. She reached the head of the table and placed her hands on the wood. She didn't sit. She leaned forward, scanning the faces of the 12 men who doubted her. "My lords," Isla began, her voice steady and clear, "I hear there are concerns regarding my lineage, my history." One of the older alphas, a man named Lord Marcus, cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, it is simply unprecedented. You spent 12 years serving drinks. You have no training in statecraft, no education in pack law." Isla smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You are right, Lord Marcus," she said. "I served drinks. I scrubbed floors. I listened to people who thought I was invisible." "Do you know what you learn when you are invisible?" She walked slowly around the table, trailing her fingers along the backs of their chairs. "I learned that Alpha Gavin was embezzling funds from the Western trade route," she said, passing a stunned Alpha on the left. "I learned that your pack, Lord Marcus, has been hiding a border dispute with the rogues to avoid paying the war tax." Lord Marcus turned pale. "I learned how to read people," Isla continued, returning to the head of the table. "I learned how to survive on nothing. I learned that power isn't about the suit you wear or the wine you drink. Power is about endurance." She let her eyes flash violet, just for a second. The pressure in the room spiked, the undeniable aura of the white wolf pressing down on them. "I did not inherit this crown," Isla declared. "I bled for it. I was broken, and I rebuilt myself. If any of you think you can do a better job because you were born in a silk cradle, step forward. I challenge you right now." Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Lord Marcus slowly pushed back his chair. He stood up and bowed deep, exposing his neck. "Long live the Queen," he whispered. One by one, the other alphas stood and bowed. Daemon watched from the shadows, pride swelling in his chest until he thought it might burst. She didn't need him to save her anymore. She was the storm. Later that night, The castle was quiet. Isla and Damon sat in front of the roaring fireplace in the master suite. Isla was curled up on the rug, her head resting on Damon's knee as he read a book. "They respect you," Damon said quietly, breaking the silence. "They fear me," Isla corrected. "Respect comes later." "They will love you," Damon promised, "just as I do." Isla looked up at him. The firelight danced in her eyes. "You know, back in the kitchen, I used to dream about a knight in shining armor. I thought he would come and take me away to a castle." "And?" Damon teased. "Am I not shiny enough?" "You're not a knight," Isla smiled, reaching up to pull him down for a kiss. "You're the king of monsters. And it turns out, I'm a monster too." Damon kissed her deeply, a promise of forever, sealed in the touch. "Then let us be monsters together," he whispered against her lips, "and let the world tremble." Isla Bennett, the girl who once collapsed in a pile of broken glass, closed her eyes and smiled. She was home, she was loved, and she was finally, truly free. What a journey! From the dirty floors of the Silver Creek kitchens to the throne of the Obsidian Palace, Isla proved that true power isn't about where you start, but how you survive. She didn't just find a mate. She found her voice and her inner wolf. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the people who are treated as invisible are actually the ones holding the most power. Karma eventually came for Chloe and Gavin, proving that cruelty always has a price. I hope you enjoyed this dramatic werewolf romance. If you loved seeing the Alpha King drop to his knees for his true mate, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this story with your friends who love a good underdog revenge plot, and subscribe so you'll never miss the next episode. What do you think Isla's first rule as queen should be? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.